Okay, so to start with, let's look at what's in the basement here. Turbo Timber Evolution, a Crescendo, brand new one. Already got a dirty belly, already been flown. A PA-28. You can't take the wings off of very easily, so it sits here with the wings on. And above that, the maul that I won at the Christmas party. In the back, a disassembled Cessna 150. Wings are right over there. Another Turbo Timber, an older one. This is the one that I traded for my second Timber X, and an Apprentice S that actually belongs to the school where I teach, but it sits here most of the time. Hopefully we'll get it out this summer and do some teaching with it. So let's go take a look at the box. I found a couple of interesting markings on the outside cardboard. I want to take the airplane out of its box. Let's look at the box. The box came in. So this is it, the cardboard that arrived on the porch yesterday. And I note that this is box number 408 out of 585, and I'm thinking that probably, since it has a serial number on it, Horizon must have ordered 585 of these, and this was number 408. So let's go around and look at the other side of the box. And upside down here, let's flip it over. We can see that this was inspected by somebody, whoever HH009 is, 1 November 2021, which would suggest that it was either shipped, probably 1st of November 2021. How long it took in transit, we don't know, but obviously this was about 5 months ago. Let's see, November, December, January, February, March. Yep, about 5 months ago that this probably left China en route to the United States. What we don't know, obviously, is how long it's been sitting in Horizon's inventory in Champaign, Illinois, waiting to be shipped. But there's just a little clue about what shipping has involved, maybe, and maybe why this airplane was on sale for $80 off. Maybe Horizon had a little extra inventory. This is going to be my first ever unbox and assemble, not build, because we're not actually building an airplane. I've built balsa and film models. This is not building an airplane. It's assembling an airplane that was already built in China. Now what you have to do is put a few pieces together and fly it. So, with that aside, we're going to make a modification in this airplane. I'm going to take the original ESC out and put in this Avian 60 amp ESC that has telemetry. The ESC that comes with this airplane does not have telemetry, and I want to be able to get voltage reporting off of the airplane in case I put a battery in it that's not charged, or if something happens in flight. I'm being a little too aggressive, I'm running the battery down, I don't want to have it run out of juice and have it land where I don't intend it to land. So we're going to put this Avian in it as well as program it completely, set it up with telemetry, and set it up with selectable AS3X safe and gyros off, 3 flight mode settings using forward programming in the AS631 that comes with the airplane. So let's get started and see how it unpacks. Okay, and here we go. Oh look, they put on a nice little, don't need that knife yet. Oops, that didn't work out well. Here we go, totally unreversed. So, box out. And set this over here. Away. Now I need my knife. Tape, tape, more tape, more tape. And it should come right off. Ah, okay. So this stuff goes over here. And what do we got? Well, of course, it is the Horizon Hardy model. So we have one wing. There you go. The flaps and roll arms. The manual, which we will need. Prop and spinner. The fuselage. We'll wrap it. Let's get the wrapping off. Oh, wrapping off. Take a look. Everything looks good. Those gyros are moving smoothly. This is the old-fashioned one with the battery hatch on the bottom. Haven't updated this one like they did the turbo timber. So we'll set that over here. And that's all for that side. Where's my knife? Where did I put it? There it is. Okay. Tape. 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 Okay. Goes in the floor. And we have two elevators. Another wing. B. And wings in perfect condition. We've got our gyros on this side. It has really nice hinges. Wing over there, it looks looks really good. And here it looks like we have a wing spar. I'm going to need a knife. Wing spar, and I've got the strap for the wing goes there. Wing spar goes here. That's the optional tail wing spar. Oops. And there's the carbon fiber. I said wing spar, I meant stabilizer spar. And then here we got landing gear. That's all. It is. That's it. Okay, so that's everything out of the box. It all looks like it's in perfect condition. I don't see any issues here. Looks like a little tape on that or something, but we'll take that off. Okay, got all of our spars. Let's take a look at these elevators. They look to be absolutely in pristine condition. Fit together well. Need a little, there we go, just a little loosening up. Oh boy, this thing's gonna fly like crazy. So, this is in fact my third turbo, or not turbo, Timber X. We've got two turbo timbers over there, one of which I traded my second turbo timber for. And that's the version 2 of the turbo timber, not the Evolution. And the first one, I put a radio in, as I covered in a previous video, that I didn't get it programmed quite correctly, and I crashed it on the maiden, badly, totaled it. At that point, I decided I need something a little tamer, and I bought the second turbo timber, flew it a few times, and that really made me believe I needed something tamer. So before I had a chance to wreck that one, I traded it for my beloved turbo timber, the blue and white version that I have flown maybe 150 or 200 times with a few minor incidents. I've had to glue the landing gear back on once, but really nothing else major. I did crack the cowling in the process of breaking the landing gear strut and had to get a new cowling. But other than that, it's been really fun airplane to fly. I really enjoyed it. And I loved it so much, I bought the Turbo Timber Evolution over here with the top hatch and the wing plugs, and it too has been a delight to fly. So I'm looking forward now to having advanced far enough, I think, where I can fly this Timber X, maybe even hooking up the flaps as ailerons so that they move with the ailerons and not separately, and really turn this beast loose in roll and whatever else I want to do with it. But yeah, when you put the ailerons in, hook the ailerons to the flaps in this airplane, you get a roll rate that's unbelievable. I've seen it on YouTube. So let's stop here for a second and let me get this packaging out of the way, and we'll start putting the airplane together. Okay, so we've got the whole airplane unboxed. Now we're going to assemble it. We're not going to build it, we're going to assemble it, because it's almost already built. It's just been constructed by and painted by people in China, I suppose, and all we have to do is put the pieces on that they have already pretty much put together for us. The motors in it, the rudders on it. All we have to do in terms of control surfaces is put on the horizontal stabilizer and elevator using the supplied horizontal stabilizer spar, and I'm going to use the carbon spar initially at least. So I've inspected everything, and the fuselage appears to be perfect. And the nice thing about this is that if I pull off the battery hatch, I have the motor wires, everything available to me that I can undo and put this new Avian 60 amp Telemetry ESC in, so that I can get telemetry information off of the battery in flight. The ESC that comes with this airplane is not a smart ESC. This was about $65 extra. Given that I got $80 off on the flash sale, I feel like it was a good investment. And I really like these Avians. They're programmable, you can reverse them. There's a lot of other customizable things you can do, but I do notice that all three wires are the same color, so I'm going to have to put it together, power it up, and see if the prop turns in the right direction. If it doesn't, I've got a choice. I can either reverse two of these wires, any two, or I can go into the programming on my receiver and reverse it there. I think the easiest thing to do would probably just be to reverse a wire, because it's going to be evidently quite accessible. So, like I said, everything looks really good. I've got no obvious defects in the airplane. The lights are all there. Servo sounds really good. The rudder servo. The rudder appears to be mounted perfectly. And if I look at the horizontal stabilizer and elevators, no nicks, no cuts, everything is pristine. And the wings, let's check out the servos here. Move nice and easy. One thing about this particular airplane is it's got plastic hinges already mounted, so that you get nice, smooth, full deflections. And unlike the Turbo Timber, which has flaps that will only go down, they won't go up. These flaps move in both directions, and you can hook up the ailerons and the flaps on the same channel with a Y connector and really get some significant aileron. Yeah. So let's look at the other one. Check it out. Sounds great. I do notice that the retainer is loose on this one. Let's see, let's get that back on. I hope. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll worry about that later. The little O-ring here, that safety ring that goes in over the clevis, is loose. So we'll wait till we get the controls all centered up with the radios before we make a decision about that. Then we got our 3 wires here, label, flap, aileron, and lights. So that's all good. Here is and there goes my phone. Here is the prop spinner and all the hardware that goes there. So everything looks great. Landing gear, standard, problematic sometimes timber landing gear. This does not have the upgraded landing gear that the Evolution model has. We'll just have to be careful with it. So let's get started here. Like I said, I'm lucky with this one that I don't have to take anything away or anything off. I don't have to pull the motor off. I've done several of these ESC replacements, and in every prior case I had to take the motor out to get to these 3 connections to the ESC. So what we're going to do is go over here, and these plug in vertically. I'm just going to pull that connection out, and hopefully the ESC will just come out here. Yep, there it comes. So there's the ESC that comes with the airplane. And let's just note that, look at this one, maybe these two will line up, that black is on the right, blue is in the middle, and red is on the left. Now this is going to go in like this, just slide in there. Yep. So then we'll maybe the best way to do that is to go in this way. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think maybe. Yep, there it goes. Over. Let's see where the wires are now. Yeah, we've got all the wires. So instead of boring you with fishing those wires through, I did take a little break, and I've got now everything wired up, I think, based on the position of the different colors in the original ESC. I think I have these all hooked up right. But if I don't, I'm just going to reverse a couple of them. I've got the battery wire connector hooked through there, through its proper place, and I have the ESC hooked up in the power port on the 631 receiver. So let's test the direction of the motor rotation. So should rotate clockwise if I hook a battery up under here. So let's grab a battery. And I'll just take a little 1300 here. Hook it up. And we will, hopefully, assembly in a second. Go ahead and bind the model. Transmitter's over here. Okay, I've got it in bind mode just by pushing the button there. First thing I'm going to do is power up the transmitter. And I will go start a new airplane. System setup, model select, add a new model. Create a new model, and we'll create a new, it's a new acro, it's number 9. So we will just go back. There goes the phone again. I don't know about the rest of you, but I get a tremendous number of blind calls. Okay, I'm going to hit bind here. Yes, bind. Okay, we are bound, and smart battery not charged. I knew that when I put it in, but you don't always know that. So all I want to do here is turn the motor on. Let's see what direction it's turning. Nope, it is counterclockwise. Just make sure before I do it. Turning in the wrong direction. Now at this point I could, if I wanted to, do it the hard way. Go in and power off. Go in and reverse it by reprogramming ESC, but let's do it this way. Let's try this first. Reverse 2 leads. Any 2, they say in the manual, to get it turning in the right direction. Okay, so put battery back in. And flip it over and let's try it again. Yep, so that is now turning clockwise. Good deal. Okay, so next we're going to put the landing gear on, install the elevators, and put on the, I'm probably not going to put on the prop until the very last thing, and then we'll do some programming. So let's start with, I kept recording after I got the ESC put in. But building these airplanes is so simple that I thought, well, why waste your time and mine, video and all of that, and having you play it back when it's only a matter of a few screws to put the landing gear on and the tail feathers on this airplane and hook up hook up the elevator servo to the elevators and then center everything up. So I've kind of truncated that. There she is sitting there with the battery plugged in, and I've still got the prop on it, but I'm going to be really careful with that. So here we go. Let's start talking about radio setup. Here we go. So here's the camera now focused on my NX8. Let's zoom in just a little bit so we can see the settings a little bit better. And I have an 11-point checklist over here I'm going to work off of. So the first thing you got to do once you get it to this point is bind it, and I've already done that. And binding this airplane is very simple. You just reach into the fuselage, hit the bind button on the receiver, starts flashing, and then you just go to here, punch this, go down to bind, and bind it. And that's all I did. I didn't use bind plug, didn't worry about trying to bind it with safe select enabled, because we're going to do that a different way. So now it's bound. So let's go back to the main screen. I have got system volumes set up here.
Volume 95.
On the rotating knob. On the top of the transmitter. Very handy to have. I'll show you how to do that. So the first thing we're going to do, turn the volume down, is we're going to set up our throttle cut. And I like to use D for the throttle cut. It's right here, right above the throttle. It's a nice long switch. It's easy to do that, easy to reach that from the throttle. So I love to use that. So we're going to go to throttle cut, and we're going to set it up minus 130% on switch D, and that's all I have to do. Delay and require stick low, you just leave them where they are. That's the factory default. And I'm going to turn the volume up. I've got sounds set up.
Volume 95. Motor off. Motor on.
It's a 3-position switch. The only one that's on is all the way up.
Motor off. Motor on.
There we go. Motor off.
Motor off.
So that's all there is. We'll set up the sounds later. I'm going to turn the volume back down. Now, once I get throttle cut on and working, I then go and set up all of the controls by making sure that they're all well centered with the radio on, so that the servos arms are all centered up. And that's pretty much where I'm going to try to fly it the first time, with all the gyros turned off, to start with at least. So once we get that done, depending on the airplane, you're going to want to center up the steering wheel, whether it's a nose wheel or a tail wheel. You want the airplane to taxi straight, so you're going to go back, in this airplane, go back to the tail wheel, and the only adjustment you can make is to bend the wire that the tail wheel is mounted to and into the rudder. You can take a pair of pliers and make some minor bends in that. If you had a nose wheel airplane, you're probably going to have a servo, that's going to run that and the rudder, and you're going to need to adjust it from the servo. But with this airplane, it's pretty simple. That little tail wheel sitting back there, you just bend that spring that holds it on a bit, and you can get her centered up, and I've already done that. So now we're going to set up, this is the complicated part, AS3X and safe on a switch. To do that, I've got to set up a flight mode. So I'm going to go down to System Setup, and I'm going to F Mode Setup. I'm going to set up one switch. The B switch right up here is going to be my flight mode switch, and flight mode 3 is going to be gyros off. Flight mode 2 is going to be AS3X on, and flight mode 1 is going to be safe on. So all I got to do is select switch B, and then go over and select from forward programming, select what I want to do with switch B. We'll do that here in just a second. But before we do that, we need to go to spoken flight mode. And this will by default speak flight mode 1, flight mode 2, flight mode 3. You want to silence all 3 of those, because we're going to set up a different set of sounds for that flight mode. And we don't want spoken flight mode to be working, so we're going to silence all of those, and then go back to the main screen, and we get the smart battery warning. We'll see how we set that up later. So actually, I probably should have done this first. System setup, yes, and we need to go to channel assign. Okay, so we need to assign switch B to an open radio channel. And I've assigned it to the gear channel because I don't have landing gear on this airplane. There are 3 open channels on an NX8 that you can assign: AUX 2, AUX 3, and gear. And I've assigned it to gear, and I'm not using the other ones. I've got those inhibited. So that takes care of that. going to go back to the main screen. Now, in order to arm forward programming, I actually have to turn on the motor. So I'm going to reach up here, turn on the motor, and run it up. Oops. Run it up. Just momentarily. Turn it back off. Test it. Yep. It's off and test it. Accidentally hit my tripod. Okay. So we're going to go down to forward programming right there. And because this receiver has not been unlocked, the only thing I can access is gyro setting. There's a whole plethora of things you can do. You can set AS3X gains, you can set safe mode angles, rates, and all kinds of interesting things. But those were already programmed for this model by Horizon Hobby, so I'm going to leave those where they are. I'm not going to unlock it. If I was going to unlock it, I'd have done that first. And you can really get into a lot of trouble if you unlock one of these, so good luck if you try it. You better spend a lot of time watching some videos and make sure you know what you're doing. So click on that, click on Safe Select, and here's where we're going to set up our B switch. Right now, the switch is in flight mode 3, all the way up. Switch position 2, flight mode 3. And there's my gear. I've already selected that as my channel. And AS3X I have set to off, and Safe Select I have set to on. It's important that you set this one first. Okay, then I want to flip to 2, flight mode 2, gear. AS3X is on, Safe is off, Safe Select is still on. Then I'm going to flip the switch down to flight mode 1, still in gear, Safe is on, Safe Select is on. And that, in fact, will turn on safe mode for you. It does not disable failsafe. That is still programmed in, so that if you lose contact with the airplane, it will go into I believe it's a left turn, maybe a right turn, I can't remember, but it'll try to land itself by going into about a 20-degree bank turn and maintain airspeed with the elevators and descend in a controlled manner, hopefully on something soft. But at any rate, it will not go straight into the ground, and at a relatively slow speed, it probably won't do a lot of damage, even if it hits something valuable. So it is important, though, that you check, when you do this, check safe mode and make sure that all the controls are working properly. In other words, you're going to put it up in safe mode, and you're going to, wait a minute, wrong switch, let's do this one. That's safe, and you're going to check and make sure that, it's not armed. Okay, let's arm it again. Okay, what the heck's going on here? Oh, I know. Wait a minute. I got to get out of here before this will work. Forgot about that. We got to go back to the main screen. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. Now that should... Okay, turn the volume back up.
Mode. Volume 85. Manual mode. Safe mode.
Forgot I have to be back on this screen.
11.6
That screen.
0 amps.
Right there.
77 Fahrenheit.
I still had it in forward programming. It wasn't going to let me do anything. Okay, so you want to make sure that it's in safe mode, that all these controls are moving in the right direction, including the elevators, particularly, and the ailerons, and they are. So we check that, and if that's working, AS3X will work. Okay, that's safe mode. Now, let's get back over here, and the next thing we're going to do is set up rates, and that's relatively easy if you've ever set one of these up. I put rates on the E switch right up here at the top.
Low rates.
Low rates down, mid rates middle, high rates up. And we just go to DR and Expo.
ESC 11.6 volts, 0
If you've ever-
amps, 75 Fahrenheit.
If you've ever set one of these up, you know that it is important. Wait a minute, get that back to 0. I'm going to go down one more. The first thing you need to do on each axis is set up the switch. And I've got it set for switch E, and ailerons at 100 on high, no expo, 75 on mid, and way down on 40. And for this airplane, very low rate on low. The manual says set it at 175, but I set up low rates at 40. This airplane has huge control surfaces, and 40 will still give you a lot of control. If you're not comfortable with that, just throw it in safe to land. So we're going to set up ailerons, elevators. I set it 100, 80, and 50, a little bit higher on the mid and low than the ailerons. And again, down here on switch E, you have to set that manually for all 3 axes, and the rudder the same as the elevators. So that's how we set up rates in Expo, and the Expo is just a matter of personal preference. Flaps. I set up flaps up here. And whoops, let's get back out of here, not change anything. So flaps are down just below Expo, and those are on the G switch. Down is down and up is up. So position 2 right now is up, 0, 0 on flap and elevator. When I put it in position 1, that's quote landing flaps, or 50%. And I put in 10% down elevator to go along with that. That's just an experiment, because anytime you put the flaps down on a high wing airplane, it's going to tend to balloon up. The only way to test that is to fly it, and I haven't flown it yet. And position 0 is full flaps, 100%, and I put in 15% of elevator for full flaps. On this airplane, you can easily connect the flaps to the ailerons with a Y connector on one on each side, and you get some really wild roll rates but then you don't have any flaps. So anyway, I'm not sure how good flaps are for this airplane anyway. If I get to be good enough with it, I will eventually set up the ailerons and flaps, as one control surface. Okay. All right, so that is how I set up the flaps. Next, we're going to set up the volume control to the R knob. To do that, we have to go over here, go down to System Settings. I believe that's right. Go to Next. There we go. And we go down here to Volume Controls. Click on that. That brings up Voice Volume Control. And buried deep in this menu system, we have Analog, which is up here.
Volume 90.
That's the rotating knob up at the top. That's how you can set that up. So let's go back to the beginning. Now, changing sounds is a pain. I know it. Oops, there we go again. But it does take a little time, but I love having switch changes tell me what they're doing. So, switch changes. B is mode. And those, well, let's see here. Okay. Turn them up.
Volume 50.
Safe,
Volume 65.
stable,
Stability mode. Manual mode. Safe mode.
motor,
Motor off.
switch D,
Motor on. Motor
rates,
off. Mid rates. Low rates.
low rates, mid rates, high rates,
High rates.
and flaps.
Takeoff flaps. Landing flaps. Flaps up.
So those are the key ones for me to have set up so that when I flip a switch, I get an audible verification that the switch is doing what I expect it to do.
ESC 11.6 volts, 0 amps, 77
Now, let's set up telemetry. Telemetry. I'm going to set up, first thing you got to do in telemetry is do this auto config. If you have put in a different ESC. If you haven't put in a different ESC, then you're not even going to need to do this. So, I'm going to tell it to auto configure for the new telemetry capabilities that I put in with that Avian ESC. And what I want to do is go to Smart ESC, and you can play around with a bunch of these, but important for me is to know the status of that ESC voltage. And I've set up low voltage alarm at 3.3 volts per cell.
ESC 11.6
And when it gets down to that point, I will get an alarm, a buzz, when a vibration rather, in the transmitter that'll tell me I need to land now. I try not to hit that, but there's other settings you can play around with. Gyroscope, all you can do is turn it off and on, but you can get maximum and minimum G-forces alarms if you want to. The flight log, you can track lost frames and holes, signal strength. You can get status reports on that. Receiver voltage in these modern airplanes doesn't matter, because if you got enough battery to run the motor, you got enough battery to run the receiver, chances are. So you can play around with those if you want, but that takes care of the telemetry, and that's what you're hearing. There's my smart battery alarm again. And of course, if I want to see what the battery's doing, all I've got to do is, there are some ESC stats, and there is my ESC voltage. I'm currently at 11.4. This is a 3-cell 3200 that I've got hooked up. And this is what's going to get reported to me audibly. I also get temperature and amps. I can get, I don't think I can get RPM with this one. I have got one model I can get RPM reported. Now, the last thing I'm going to set up, and this is just personal preference, there's no real need to do this, is a timer. Now, by default, timer 1 is a countdown timer, and you can change this time. It's not as critical on this model as it might be on yours, because I've got that ESC that's going to tell me when the battery is running down. And if I'm, with my experience with most of these models, if you're running it at full power a lot, you probably ought to be thinking about landing at 4 minutes, and if you're just loitering around, you might go 7 or 8. But you don't know, which is why I love that Smart ESC. I've got it set for 5, and throttle stick over 25%, it starts running. Under 25%, it doesn't. One time is inhibit. That means that it doesn't reset between flights. But what I've done is set up, timer 2 as a stopwatch. And you can actually rename that. It's in stopwatch mode, which means it starts when throttle goes over 25%, but is active. Well, that means that once it starts, it doesn't stop. So if we go back over to our main screen and we throttle up, timer 1 starts running, but when I pull the throttle back, it stops, and timer 2 keeps going. And it will go until you reset it by punching this button here. So that allows you to record your flight time as compared to just your engine run time, which I find is interesting. But again, it's optional. You really don't need to do that. So that's it. that's how I set it up. I will put this radio setup checklist in the description. Hope you find all this useful, particularly setting up safe the way I did. It's so much easier than setting it up the way the manual tells you to do. And it gives you the option of turning off the gyros, which I find is really handy for a maiden to take off with no gyros, fly it up to 100, 200 feet, turn on AS3X, and then turn on safe, make sure everything's working properly. If something goes wrong with the gyros, you still have the option of flying it manually just by flipping a switch. Might save an airplane for you someday. Just make sure you know what you're doing, and I put in, that's why I put in those voice prompts, so that when you change that switch position, you know what to expect from the airplane. So anyway, we've had a horrible spring here in Indiana. I've only been out to the field twice. I think I've made 3 airplanes so far this spring. Once I get this new Timber X maiden, which is going to be, I hope, very soon, maybe even yet this week. I've got that new Crescendo over there, and I've made my new mall. So looking forward to some flying this summer, and I'm sure you are. If you live here in the Midwest, you know there haven't been many opportunities so far this year, particularly if you have a full-time or part-time job, because the weekends have just been awful. And hope you get out real soon. Be careful, have some fun, and happy skies. Goodbye.